without further ado, I think we will get into the first film, which is Incident in a Ghostland, also known as Ghostland, which came out in 2018. So, Incident in a Ghostland, I might go back and forth between calling it an Incident in a Ghostland and Ghostland just because I've seen both titles. So please don't be alarmed if that does continue to happen. I'm talking about the same movie. Came out in 2018. The synopsis on IMDb reads, a mother of two who inherits a house is confronted with murderous intruders on the first night in their new home and fights for her daughter's lives. 16 years later, when the daughters reunite at the house, things get very strange. The Rotten Tomato score is 57% and the audience score is 55%. I mean, if you know Rotten Tomatoes, for a vast majority of horror movies, they seem to have a lower score overall. The audience scores definitely can be higher, especially with, I mean, when you get to like A Quiet Place, like The Conjuring, movies like that. I mean, those are top tier. But I think a lot of these movies that go under the radar, they deserve, I don't know. I really I enjoy them a lot of the times, and that's, I mean, why we're talking about this collection today is I really did enjoy these three films by this filmmaker, and I don't think that he's getting the recognition that he deserves up to this point. So yeah. Incident in the Ghostland is currently available on Shudder, which is where I watched it. But you can also rent it on Amazon. If you do have Amazon and you haven't used the Shudder free trial, this would be a very good time to do that. I think. I don't know how often. I don't know how long. It might be a week. It might be a month. But checking out Ghostland would be well worth your time, I think. Oh. Some of the pros that I really, really did enjoy about Ghostland is watching these movies backwards. You get to see his budget kind of increase. So with the more the more high tech cameras and things like that in his disposal, I feel like he really capitalized on that. And the imagery is still very grimy and dirty, but in higher definition, I guess. And it didn't take it away. I thought it really, really helped. Especially, I mean, the first 20 minutes of this movie, you just kind of have your jaw on the floor. And there are a lot of certain sequences that are difficult to watch. So for this, and kind of going back and forth, but for Martyrs is even more so. If movies like Saw or I Spit on Your Grave or Last House on the Left, if those are hard for you, then then you might want to just watch a different video because this director is not for you. Tall Man is a lot more, it is not as much, so at least stay tuned to see that review. Maybe that will be something you're interested in if that more rough, torturous stuff is not for you. Another big pro for me was the twist. All three of these movies subvert expectations in a very intentional way. It's not just because it's a French filmmaker and they don't make everything the same way that we do here in the United States. There are intentional deceptions. Some of them are more Shyamalan-esque than others. I won't give away which one is which. But this one's deception was deserved. And sometimes that doesn't really happen. It's like, I think you came up with this twist first, and then you made a film around that. And maybe that was the case, but it feels earned. And one of the things that's kind of in my medium section is during this first 20 minutes that might be the best part of this whole film. I'm not sure because the intensity, there are dip downs that way you're not always at a 10, but it's pretty intense for the total runtime. How long are we going here? Hour 31. It's pretty intense through the whole time, but that first 20 minutes is just insane. And there are a couple of things that happen concerning the mother that was in the synopsis. And I'm like, wow, is that really I mean, she's fighting back against these intruders. I'm like, man, these intruders are huge. Like, how are you putting up a fight like this? And that was something that really, it didn't take me out of it, but I'm like, it was something I questioned because, I mean, I don't know how it maybe she was running on adrenaline, all that stuff. But it's also one of the plot points that does come up later, when we see them 16 years down the road. Another medium aspect for me was there was a higher number of jump scares than are in his other two works. I'm a person that doesn't despise jump scares as some other YouTube pundits do. I'm fine with like a fair amount of it, but the original Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite horror movie of all time. So the 2010 jump scare filled one, it really irritates me. so there's definitely a line, but I felt like this one had enough atmosphere and genuine horror to kind of embrace it, that it didn't take me out of it, but it was something where I'm like, there were a couple times I'm like, oh, another jump scare. So there is enough where that was something that I noticed, but it's not something that took me out of the film. And these jump scares made me jump. So it's that's why it's in the medium area and not on the cons, because it did not bring that down too much for me. And speaking of the cons, there's not a lot that I did not like about this film. When we get into kind of the rankings and things, I might kind of elaborate more, but it really was something where once it finished, I started texting a lot of my friends like, take the hour and a half and go watch Ghostland. So this is a film that it's the reason that I watched the other two, and the reason that I really thought Laugier, and I'm so sorry, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I used Google Translate, and that was what they told me it was. So I'm trying my best. I even tried to find some interviews online, and most of them are in French, so it didn't help at all. But Incident in a Ghostland, definitely a movie that I have recommended, and I recommend to you as well. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye, guys.